right. Good morning. Just to let you know. So we'll start the session with making a Mandala offering as a token for requesting the teachings, and then Geshe will lead the way with refuge and Bodhichitta. Shut up. Sorry? I know. I have echo in my head. Sa shi po ki ju shi me to Ram Ri Ram Ling Shi Ni De Gyen Pa Di Sang Ye Shin Du Mik Te O Wa Gi Do Ku Nam Da Shin La Chu Pa Shoi Dan Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniya Taya Ni.
Sangye Chodan
Tsogi Chonam La Chanchu Bardu Dami Kyasuchi Dagi Chushegi Betsonangi Drola Pinchi Sangye Druparasho
Sangye
Chonan
Chodan
Tsogi Chonam La Chanchu Bardu Dami Kyasuchi Dagi Chushegi Betsonangi Drola Pinchi Sangye Druparasho
Sangye
Chodan
Chodan
Tsogi Chonam La Chanchu Bardu Dami Kyasuchi
Dagi
Dagi Chushegi Betsonangi Drola Pinchi Sangye Druparasho.
Kanki tuzini zone dawa tamje bambi chere tambi chun denze kodam tela chance lo. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, my friend.
Da.
Georgie Pasha Lanchida. Nikona mean Jutu Maso. Ko ni trouble savaris. Kona pini tanda Gempi Nipa Chuzu Chicks Roadra. Shinaki laya Kur Tindi Search. Until ya Medesa se. Samson retreat in Chigoris. Penny, the cousin to Dangamatella. Mudia, Mudi Kunga Chicks on. And you cause a Shawachi day. Pay must give the trouble and the pen. Go chance.
So Geshe has a friend visiting today. So first of all, welcome. Geshe went up last week with Moody to Gympie. It said that you have a sort of a retreat center with some tent accommodation or something like that. So Geshe said that it's in the middle of the bush and it looks like a fantastic place. So Geshe is happy to see you. What's your name, please? Craig. All right. Hi, Craig.
Ani Nashogi Chuzu Shivasaji Alan. Ani such a picky with the raw. And kangaroo to the lake descendant. Tabzan the chok some go chesarda. Zigbayamar. Chokil and Tabzans. I did not de Ezer then the coaching at Chegas lesson. Ani in a Korangi Thomas Nanchuti Fishy Thomas or inside the Blue Mountain Sydney Landrevit in the train Nalola Namchu Devchira Sonsa. Tevdi Kundushi on the Powatomic Namtaresha. Powatomic Judun Changu Dripan Corjera. The Kuchanzan call the Shiados. Pinking
So Geshe stayed in the place at Gympie about a week ago. And he said that he woke up at 4 a.m. The place had quite a few kangaroos roaming around. The kitchen was quite nice, so had only one supporting wall and the rest is open to the elements. Anyway, Geshe was having a look around at 4 a.m. and you joined him apparently at 5:30 in the morning. And Geshe said, according to what he figured from what you told him, you encountered Buddhism through picking up a book. You were taking a train maybe from the Blue Mountains to Sydney. Here it is. What's the name of the book? The Tibetan Art of Living and Dying. So there was a story, Geshe says in the book, of how Arya Sangha cultivated a certain practice, certain yoga in order to come to see Maitreya face to face. So was that your first encounter with Buddhism?
네, 들었다. 아니 간지 당한줄이야 아니 망부여레스. 저 같이죠. 그래서 사제 쿠심부라 참전로야라 가보여 캐랑기 kunzu dindi shutuna dindi yakbores 사제들이 견도못이요 아니 참전 테스트 컨텐츠 되나 아니 kunzani kena peshalda ki rang marda kanji chuk toni chenlabchi tendi bigi sanji ki sonre yagar ki bigi sonre ani chik lama tsunga bala sobi son tigiti bi kandu nima takwa che mulam kya ani dombal len yawanza samza kena kunzu tendi pa rembek sonre chetna nye samna tendi yabu yores ro nganzu parali yan jewa da kanji tendi yabu chagir was
Anyway, we have here in our community, in this Buddhist center, a few monastics, a few nuns. No, it's a small community. Geshe said that if you invite some of us up to your place from time to time to do some prayers, to do some practices, it's actually quite a nice connection. We have here of our Sangha community people that do their daily practices, daily recitations, studying and reciting texts by Lama Tsongkhapa, Izonas, the Buddha, the Bhagavan. So Geshe reckons that it could be a really nice connection coming up from time to time. Yeah.
어디를 딘자 드리케라 데라 페바 가수유스로
Geshe is happy to see you today. Are you guys from Sri Lanka or India? India. Where from in India? Gujarat. Namaste.
니돈 죽을랑가 구자라트의 축식 에선스 사제피 기우도스라
Geshe visited Gujarat in 2019 just for a short visit. Really enjoyed it. It's really it's a massive country, state, so it's a nice place, but you know, Geshe's visit was pretty short.
안간들레니 네 아니 자가 수투고이나야 샘티니 구지슈 참디슈 되기스 간선의 땅에 로숨주 사지리나 양에 난추 장바라스 난추기 아니 템비 딱부데 데버산이 좀 된데 공자가 파비일이야 꽃담샤고지 아니 공기 다시기토 아니 루드 yapsel라 소바 되게 참로 아니 자가 파비일 사든지 망치야디 자가 로절이야 아니 컨트롤샤바 디디제레샤스 콩 남비기 송을 때온디 오늘 단내기 기부 탐바싱인 데소면 수 삼삼로직 제토게 지겨레스 안도 사마 비기 야갈기 밀야 안 총치 아니 야갈기 아니 레버 페시치네 남주 때자와진자 나는 샘디네 오늘 야갈 메디 믹스에 건절이야 리버진도 삼성 소지 토닝에 데벨롭 야가 수토나 same thing in some issue and gauchi sura gau same thing gaudus.
In the years that Geshe has been living here, from time to time he's meeting people from Indian origin, and he's really happy always to meet people from India. He has a sense of respect and always welcome them with greetings. After all, Geshe said that considering that the Buddha, the Bhagavan, was born in India, for us the Buddha is the teacher. Not only the Buddha was born and lived in India, also the spiritual children of the Buddha, great Indian masters, great Indian pandits such as Nagarjuna and so forth. Masters like Nagarjuna were mainly active in South India. Anyway, so there are quite a lot of writings and teachings given by those great Indian masters, which Geshe says that for him it indicates how there's that great development of intelligence and wisdom in Indian culture and Indian society. So Geshe is always happy to meet people coming from India or from Indian background.
Laudun de Arya Devada, then Pandin Dava Travel Sobe, Song Delia Yakuch, Lobjon Chevana, one Tanigi, Putaku Shuyoris, only laying Samsung, or Tindioris, Yaruji Song, the Kaukalaya, some manche, Yalojo, Tunjuredos, and Yalojogi. Any make that condoro the Hoshu Dojara and a con number Tindijis Tindija touchables, you are touchables or Tindisungdos, Yasiyadama, the Yoros, Tinza Mixigi, any Najalojala, Lunish subdued Diavanza. Mixing Lobjunsi came never in the young, the Gaja Shiondi, Gaja Dinaloya, Bay, Koyu Kitindi. Sarkashi love says, Garapi, Jaksodi, Kamba told Lugondi, Jaksuchi, Kona loved the Chimbuda, the kind royal mares, Yankur committees, Cook Jaksuchi, Quick Gajachi Nalaya, and Anzum Mishamba, Gokor Tugurdania, Rang Sam Gokor two mares. Then the Mabishi, Mingogortana, Susan Kibuchag mares. Then the cut in the Mingogortangamis. Congregation Dindis loves Dingape massive seminary, Subu Shuch Chonsons, but Dindiars, Kanji Yargi, me sound down the Marav, Yana Maravi, Mazulombo counter, Maravi, Maravichidos, in a Yarav dozo. Mixing Yarav Jigaris, and Dindid Tongudos.
So great Indian masters such as Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, Chandakirti, if you study the manuals, the writings of those scholars, you can appreciate the depth and the qualities of the writings. And His Holiness Dalai Lama has mentioned that it seems that most of them come from South India. So Geshe says that kind of people that come from South India have certain, you can say, features. Sometimes the kind of the skin complexion is slightly darker. So whenever Geshe meets someone that seems to be from that origin, Geshe is kind of particularly kind of he thinks of the contribution in the writings of those great Indian masters. Geshe lived in India, actually in South India for 27 years in Karnataka state. So is very thoroughly familiar with India and South India. He had, when he was building his house in a monastery, Saraja Monastery, there was one guy that did all the metal work, and Geshe was overseeing all the work. And one day, as he was speaking with that builder, and Geshe was inquiring about the quality of the materials and the work and so forth. The guy said that, look, I might try to trick you, to deceive you. No, I might be successful and might get my way, but I can never deceive myself. If I deceive someone, I know it in my heart that I've done it. And that's kind of, even if I get my way, it's still something stay with you. This kind of not pleasant, lingering feeling. And Geshe felt that this is a really excellent advice. He said that kind of when you listen to someone expressing themselves in this way, you can also get something personal for you. So of course, just like anywhere else, you know, you find people that in India or anywhere else that are kind of on more of a bad behavior or ill-mannered, but also you meet people that have such a good way of living or such a good conduct. And it seems that particularly when you live your life in India and kind of you meet those people that are kind of really stand out in terms of their attitude and behavior, kind of this is really special.
어디래 닌자 베나당한 통대디 대선 잠블링 나올이야 잠블링기 따직 남주지 개왕도서 다 랍초고서라서 망체지 간주 남바산지 비추고난 조 따두고 돌이야 이왕 촉대사기 따두디 아니 베나는다니 규비기 아니 따두디 차고 딜이야 이왕 촉고라서 딘디기 벤 잠블링기 메기 이왕 촉이야기 따두디 갸간이 템버리스 the government kadin sungoris da di dinza tembares inaya parkab chilaya gaga khora nalo ya tindi tadula ya lojong chingin hajan ani nyamcha chiyo ba dia nguyo ne sorwas inaya dandi chalaya ani gaga ge chi lombo mambu nalo ya ani tadula ya thona chede marman drogoris to ko gaga gin thomo mai bi rishong ani cha chimu pu thaboti 아니 야가기 미드냠도 안주 테스트 로종 체자게티 지케제시에서 라와나 때디 약부 쇼로 상상로지 아니 어딘지 철구이스
Looking at the views and practices found in the Buddhist teachings and also the teachings of the great Indian masters, then this sense of inspiration can dawn to one's mind. Looking at the writings of those scholars that emerged from the Nalanda Institute, the Nalanda Monastery in India, this is really inspiring. Those teachings are now kind of traveling around the world, and many people study those teachings. And indeed, there's quite a lot of inspiration and joy that you can get from those views and practices. This is something that His Holiness the Dalai Lama often speaks of. Anyway, through the passage of time, at some point, the teaching of the Buddha went into decline in India. Nowadays, it seems that there are more and more people within India that find or reignited interest in the Buddhist tradition. Geshe feels that with people that have grown up in Indian culture and Indian society, when you have a conversation with them and there is an exchange of views, not only of the Buddha Dharma, but in general, Buddhist philosophy or Buddhist culture, there's some really excellent discussion that can be found when you really go deeper into it.
아니 야갈 기초도 별로 규스 또 규리어스 다 디규리컬에 또디 그게 단다 조지반데 아디샤리 켄진 보드사도 아니 레벤 페만 종네 아니 까말라실라 소바 오늘 단내기 날랜데기 다 지키드니 딩기 아니 기브리 줄체리 디디 아니 별라야 펩치 아니 별라야 산지기 때문에 쑥쑥 쌈마세 아니 조 산지 좀 된디기 송 학든도 야갈 키비기 다지 숑 비기기다 아니 의미 전에 셔봐나 아니 자와시르다 부다팔다 오만주고라 소바 아니 지금 파칭 쇼는잖아 응원도 gen라 소바 아니 디 데버타 키체슈든 데버 아니 데버 텐셀로 소바 디디 아니 로라심 아니 페티슈 아니 저버저 또 첸데다페 아니 포니에 부다 쇼제체네 로통자 직스지리야 안 도스진다 로정체네 단다 표기난된 아니 쉐피기 띵사보티 도스 차요레스 로자지야도 도스 차요레스
Tibetan Buddhism was developed in Tibet through the traveling of many Tibetans from Tibet into India. They've studied the language, Sanskrit and so forth in India, and have translated the writings mainly from the Nalanda institution into Tibetan language. So we have, when you look at the narratives, the historical narratives, we have foremost beings such as the elder Atisha, Padmasambhava, Shantarakshita, the abbot. They have contributed a lot to the dissemination of Buddhism in Tibet, and also other great scholars whom the writing also became very widespread in Tibet. So we have the writings of Buddha Palita and Chandakirti, texts such as the fundamental treatise on the middle way called Wisdom, texts such as Chandakirti's supplement to the middle way. This is from the Madhyamika side. Then from the perfection side, we have the ornament of clear realization, the Abhisamaya Alamkara. So those great texts have arrived in Tibet, and over 1,000 years, those texts have been memorized, they have been studied in classes, then taken on to the debate ground. So all of these have been happening for more than 1,000 years, which means that there is kind of a deep and profound retention or preservation of the Buddha Dharma in the Tibetan Buddhist culture.
Gyandri nyushu tsakchik di tsu kong jigni ani pyoge kiba ta lama tsungka baga tani tigin dewa ta lekshi senti se dosu chik jeto wana ta ngone gi ta gyagar kibi ki song di ani kedu pawa imba jik jeto gores ta parchik chon tani umi chon ta tsawa sherabri buddha palitari uman chugola soba di kongden ta tsashi tikchen se la soba gomba rasa la soba dosu chik jeon ta ngone gi gyagar kibi ki ani yongden ton to yajik ani kadre sam to yajik yores ra yores.
Looking at the Abhisamaya Alamkara, the ornament for clear realization, there were 21 foremost commentaries that were composed in the Indian tradition to the ornament of clear realization, the Abhisamaya Alamkara, written by Indian Pandits such as Haribhadra and Vimuktitsena. Lama Tsongkhapa, a Tibetan master, took those 21 commentaries and compiled them together into and synthesizing different points that were presented in those different commentaries. He composed a text called the Rosary of Excellent Explanation that contains these extensive commentaries and putting together all those different sources. From the Madhyamika side, going back to the Madhyamika side, the middle way side, we have the foremost text that we use for the study of the Madhyamika view. So Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise on the middle way called Wisdom, and Chandakirti's supplement to the middle way, together with Buddha Palita's text. Now, Lama Tsongkhapa took those writings and composed two main texts that give commentary on the Madhyamika side. So we have Lama Tsongkhapa's Illumination of the Thought, which is a commentary to Chandakirti's supplemental middle way, and also another commentary which explains Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise on the middle way. So looking at those writings and studying them, you can really develop that great sense of gratitude to those Indian masters that have produced these works.
Lomnir Tendrondi, Telia Tsenin Ramanda, Tagores, and Kembo Lebe, Geshe Sela Soba, Kanjita Anzu Tasani, Geshe Singed, Tangores, the Geshe Lomnir Chia, so di, and Semi Shon, and Pandin Cholandan, Chodala Soba, Tiki Zebi, and Semi Shon Chenta, Bemambores, and Digitire, and Ngondo jengi tsawa chebege, ani gyandi nyushu tsachi kordire, ani tsawa sherab dang, Buddha pala dang, oman chubo tsubege, ta umishon tigide. Teni löbe yonde ve da shaja ve zebi dan düvi shondri ani löbe inin zebi zög shon didi da shonchen kabungala ya shachin didi ani lo nyushul hazgirin la ya ani lo nyir chechene ani Geshe tengo ores ro utus chewers.
Studying those great works in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there are different institutions, different traditions. So in some of the study programs, you graduate with the title Kempo. In others, you graduate with the title of Loben. In Geshe's training system, he graduated with the title of Geshe. So in the course of this study that takes around 20 years to complete, you study, for example, the system of pramana. You use the text of Dignaga and Dharmakirti that explains the pramana, the Pali cognition tradition. Then we mentioned the Abhisamalamkara, the ornament for clear realization, which is explaining the perfection system. So there are 21 foremost commentaries explaining that system. We also mentioned the Madhyamika system, the middle way tradition, using the texts of Nagarjuna, Buddha Palita, Chandakirtis, the supplement to the middle way, the fundamental treatises on the middle way. Then we have the Vinaya tradition. The two main texts that are used for the Vinaya traditions, or you can say the text, not the two main texts, the text that we use by the two foremost scholars, Gunaprabha and Shakyaprabha are studied in the Vinaya tradition. Then we have the system of knowledge, the tradition of knowledge, the Abhidhamma system. The main text that is used was composed by an Indian master called Vasubandhu. So altogether, there are 5 main topics or subjects which are covered by this extensive study program. So we have the system of pramana, which means valid cognition. Then we have the system of the perfection, system of middle way, the middle way system, the Abhidhamma system, and the Vinaya. All of this is covered over 20 years.
dom gyamne songsha gyoti lojon nimyo se ti jik chagdos lojon nimyo se gin gon taba jik siktu ba na ani shongka bunga gi ani thanda ti be dog sisen ma ani tensha yobati jetugres ron jetugres ti.
Anyway, in this set of teaching, we study a text that is called Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun, that was composed by a Tibetan master called Namkapel. That was a great scholar. He studied many different texts and systems, and you can see through looking at this text, Mind Training of Like the Rays of the Sun, how he developed and increased his wisdom. Studying this text also, we can see how the major points taken from the 5 classics are condensed into this text in a pithy way. So Geshe highly recommends studying this text from beginning to the end.
members ni tengus the dinang da jik teba chembu ge pi da tuksam shedan korti and zo shil shabton zesha gyuchi reshas.
There are 2 main systems or traditions within Buddhism. There is the Mahayana tradition and the Hinayana tradition. Here, this text is mainly explaining the Mahayana tradition.
Direshas kazinga sam shasarodi 마시 소 균디 드미 당부숨기 테 다제 냠지 추인라 동네 니기 권네 잠니지 종아 닐라 락섬 란치 수여비 수르 만제도 세 증zam도 데르라.
So with that, we're going to go back to the text and pick up from the point that we left off in the previous session. So it says in the text, do you have the page number in English? Anyone? 79. So if you have the hard copy book, it's in page 71. The method of exchanging self and others is equivalent to the first 3 points of the 7-point cause and result training in awakening mind, such as recognizing beings as having been our mothers. The special wish that has not dealt with separately, since it is integral to the actual training in love and compassion within the practice of giving and taking.
Terda di Jean Korangi Tsendilaya Lojong Slavenza Lojong Yagi Tabchik Ra Lojong Yagi Tab. The Le Tony and a Samlo Carriers landing on Zulia Ranchis Yabati, Devan Debatan, Dungar Mendebati, and George Julia Ranchis Yabati, could this Shilla Shabatoni, Sungudasra. This Shilla Shawandi, Devan Debatan, Dungar Mendebati, and Shilla Shabayana, Mansama Lo, Nyambai Machik. Chagdosra.
The name for this text is Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun, which means that it teaches us methods for training our mind. And in training our mind, we first of all begin with the recognition that all of us naturally seek happiness and want to avoid suffering. All beings of the 6 realms of existence are the same in seeking happiness and well-being and wanting to avoid suffering. So this is the basis that is used for these teachings. The basis of recognition that all of us are equal in a seeking of happiness and wanting to avoid suffering.
Tenza sanjamden de da chö yongya dia an da zambalin nang da chölu samalo ani da lamma muter sungda da chölu samalo yongya genza di ani deva da dunga mendibigi lo ranchi suyoba tel deni deva dribi tabja da dunga sebi tabchik tone da ani chölu digi chongyores lagdön da nambigi chongla 아니 대원 대바다 동안 문제바디 안간주 포몰레에 예워요 말이 아니 리그줄레에 예워요 말이 미리기 예워요 말이 메다 톤루기 케바 예워요 말 참말로 지규리스 된서 참말로라야 대와고에 지버리 참말로라야 동안 무고에 지바인자 안간주 찬염 따고에 차그도스 찬염 마드나 리그주기 예와 체데야로 소바 포미 예와 체데야로 소바 미리기 엔제 체네 작당 토는 로데바나 둥할 문디비 토라야 둥하 용대지 마도 아니 거버키는 문도스 된자 난 사말로 찌규르다고 도스 찌규르 토니 니버 찌글라 폰니 아주 둥하세 탑을 쩨고도 데버드비에게 탑을 배고도 세디 다 남비 숑게 따따루 낭 nenga 조직 드레샤스.
So here we're looking at the Buddha Dharma, but one thing that we can say with respect to all religions, all spiritual traditions, Buddhism and other traditions as well, and looking at the teachings that are found in those different traditions given by different lamas, different teachers, all of them you can say are getting at the main point, the same point of us wanting to be happy, wanting to be well, and wanting to avoid suffering. Different traditions teach different methods for accomplishing happiness and well-being, developing happiness and well-being, and eliminating suffering. So all traditions do that, and particularly here, when we look at the approach that is taken in the Buddhist tradition for the development of happiness and well-being, the elimination of suffering, one thing that we can notice is that there is no difference between us in terms of, first of all, recognizing that all of us are equal in seeking happiness and well-being and wanting to avoid suffering, and that there is no difference in terms of gender or ethnicity or your social rank in society. All of us are exactly the same in seeking happiness and well-being. Not only that, it's not exclusive to humans. Also, you can say that humans and other living beings, animals, are the same in seeking happiness or well-being and wanting to avoid suffering and pain. So recognizing the sameness, the equality between all of us as living beings, if we then start to discriminate between, let's say, gender discrimination or social bias or a certain bias related to one's ethnicity and so forth, this will only lead to suffering, to pain. So rather than that, from a Buddhist perspective, we not only recognize the sameness, the equality of all of us, but also from a Buddhist standpoint, since we are seeking happiness, we need to cultivate the causes of happiness. And since we want to avoid suffering, we need to put a stop, to make effort in putting a stop to the cause of suffering. And this is the principal view, and also these are the principal practices found within the Buddha Dharma.
Dinza 가서다 대원 되보다 동함문 되봐 시규리 임바자 디톤이다 전번에 인지기 냠nen디야 아니 대원 되보다 동함문 되비 디톤이다 냠nen디 용국도 왔으라 아니 대화데 댐번 되비 아니 로텔이야 아니 신 대화데 댐번 되비 로텔이야 전번다 신 동화데 차원 되비 로텔이야 인지스 세워슬랍치 어 딩이 토니 딩이 공발도 땅원디 다 심전 탐절에 미비기 아니 잠바당 세워생이디 대한 심전 탐지에 동화데 동화 문제 봐임바 균전에서 심전 탐지기 대원 되고 여바인자 아니 란치고 대원 되바티 이 문제가 심전 탐절이야 대화고 여바 균전에서네 잠바도 거야 란치고 동화 문제 받자마세 심전 탐지기 동안 되고 매바인자 디 균전에서네 인지도 거단치 디송고레스라
On the basis of recognizing the sameness of living beings in terms of seeking happiness and well-being, wanting to avoid suffering, we develop love and compassion. It depends upon that recognition, we develop love to other living beings in thinking that since they are looking for happiness, may they have happiness. Wishing them to be free from suffering since they want to avoid suffering and pain, we cultivate compassion. So loving kindness is the wish for them to have happiness. Compassion is the wish for them to be free from suffering. So we increase those states of mind in our own mind stream. We're looking at all living beings. We consider all sentient beings with the same degree of loving kindness and compassion. Since all of them are seeking happiness and well-being and want to avoid suffering and pain, we wish all of them to have that. And therefore, since sentient beings are seeking happiness, we need to cultivate loving kindness. And since they wish to be free from suffering, we need to cultivate compassion.
어디레다 딘자 당은 두스만 드론디 다 심전 탐질이야 대화 심전 탐지야 대화 주고요나 심전 탐지 동을 세고요나 다 수세토 그래서 심전 탐지 동아들 트라비 살아양 고통이지 요리요 말해서 아니 여바나 간다슨 그거 그래서 다 딘디 제토니다 아니 사진이바디 아니 잔주고 샘 냠nen디 아니 저디 토니다 용구여래서 돌디바이나.
So if all sentient beings wish for happiness and wish to be free from suffering, then And if we wish that for other living beings, if we wish all living beings to be happy, if we wish for all living beings to be free from suffering, then who is the, what kind of person who does it, or what kind of person is establishing other sentient beings in a state of happiness and frees others from suffering? Can it be done? So there are a couple of questions here. Who does it? And can it be done? In what way can be done in that sense? So looking at the next section in the text, the one that explains the way to cultivate bodhicitta, those questions are addressed.
dinza kongdo da ninji da chamba nyamle chiyo kabdula ya ani dewa da dena chimaro nyambi sambi kabu dewa ti dunga da tanda chimaro nyambi sambi kabu da ani cham ninji kabu da deduk joras deduk di ngunzin chiondi zu nganzo la lunga yikso yobi nani da lu dan semni yobi nani lu le tembi ki dunga deduk jida sem le tembi deduk ni yobi nani zu sem le tembi ki 아니 대두 디톤이 송구여반자 아니 샘리야 대어트야디 간다지 중고 그래서 심전 탐지 샘금 대와드 댐바디 간다지 제고 그래 심전 탐지 샘금 동하다 타와디 간다지 제고 그래 슬라운디 감다 메버 쳇다와신디 심비톤이 비기다 아니 란돌 그네 템비톤이다 동하리 트와다 대와드 댐바 제고 원자 다 딘지 니버드 슬런도스 디술로 여바나다 디치투 그랬어 탁 쳐야 돼. 디간 탁 치고 그랬어.
So we said that we first of all recognize that sentient beings are the same in seeking happiness and well-being and not wanting to experience suffering. Now, looking at the experiences of happiness and suffering of ourselves as living beings, we have three different levels. We have body, we have speech, and we have mind. Now, looking at the experiences of happiness and suffering on those three different levels, there is mental suffering and mental happiness experienced in relation to the mind, and there's also physical pain and physical pleasure experiencing or being experienced on a sensorial level or physical level. So out of those two levels, body and mind, the main thing that we focus on is the mental level. So we're looking at eliminating mental pain, mental suffering, and cultivating mental happiness and well-being. So how is it that we establish sentient beings with mental happiness and well-being and we free them from mental suffering? Well, how is it that such a thing is possible? Well, if we were to know all the dispositions of other living beings, knowing the dispositions of other living beings would mean to know their inclinations, their attitudes, and so forth. If we were to know all the dispositions of others, which could be teaching them methods for cultivating happiness and well-being and eliminating suffering that accord with their specific dispositions. So who has the ability to do that? This is the question that Nankapa brings up in the first section, in the first part of this section. Who has the ability to teach sentient beings in a way that accords with their mentality? This is what we need to resolve.
니버 찬주 되니기 찬주기 셈 좋았네 대달 잠인지 잠비 대다 무슨 좀 니버테 가나요 냠나스 냐라다 좀바 다니 첨보 남다 사주 찬주 삼바 첨보 나와 셴딩기 틀리삼기 메케바 나메스 여행장 코치스 par 아니 돈도 기미치기 거네 쳔트리 좀 송바다 वेसरनारी सम केवल तेने क्या सिमजें ठामे बन्यांगे दे न्यांदे लंगु निबे कोंपा संगी न्याची लास संगी न्याची ला दे मासे रांदें पांतो थरचिबे कोंपा या संगी न्याची दु सेबे संगी कोनालंदुस दा सिमजें 탐지 기견데 되닌 탈친 संगी 기 कोंपा 토버 차우 냠도 장오스.
So Namkapel in his text says, you might wonder what practical use love and compassion could be. Great beings like the hearers, solitude realizers, and great bodhisattvas on the 10th stage possess boundless virtues, enabling them to work for the welfare of other beings. Nevertheless, only by attaining the state of enlightenment can they place innumerable beings in a state beyond suffering, spontaneously and uninterruptedly until the end of cyclic existence, by emitting one ray of light or giving one session of discourse. In addition, it is only as a Buddha that you acquire perfection of your own personal fulfillment of abandonment and insight. Understanding this, you should train yourself thinking, I shall attain enlightenment to fulfill the aims of both myself and all sentient beings.
Tere denza kanji o dindigi lojonji jantuba logic jantuba na ani suzu semlya lodab damasuna shu kigiya sares ra manzu lodab kiondi teni khari ina donle che tuyach ra ani pemba khari na tang tuyach ni ani pe ta kioni kio gyunchin kale gyab ko sambi ani simjing che kale gyab ko sambi samlo diya na ani simjen la ya nötsigi chawadi rangshin garo wasres kaduyina ya simjen la ya pembi samlo chi tawandi simjen la pembi samlo di chamyin jires ti rangi semgula yina shidete ya ani nyenkor la yebige ani chik simjen sundachi na tu samlo la ya ani shidete tuya chi kanji nötsi pusam ya machin chi penton bashi chedengi kewi chawang bayna ani samlo ani 간지 소설했죠. 가오체 등이지. 심전 탐지 로 밑사마이뭐 돈로 심전 임바이냐. 안추 가오체 등이지. 야시자담 차고 살았다디.
So we train a mind in this way, and through training a mind in this way, a mind becomes strong. We develop this fortitude in mind that enables us to cope with whatever comes up. We have the ability to take up difficulties or hardship when we develop that fortitude in our mind. And we also develop that intentionality in thinking that from life after life, I will continue to work hard. I will continue with this great diligence for the sake of all sentient beings. And when you develop that intentionality, then naturally you come to desist from harming others, and you find yourself in situations where not only you wish other living beings to be happy, but you also benefit them. And through that, your mind becomes peaceful. And also there is that peaceful influence that you have peace and well-being that you exert on your surrounding. Not only you're refraining from harming others, but you benefit every living being, all living beings, in whatever way you can. Not only human beings, but also other living beings, animals, and so forth. And as a result of that, people gravitate toward you. Living beings gravitate toward you with that sense of affinity, with a sense of joy.
예, 나 대다위기 잔주고 샘중고 폐에 파바빠진기 다 산길에 쉬비 도치기요 살아왔어. 티나나라 갈송어리 잔주 샘기 소놈칸 가데텔라 순치나 남긴 감는 공간디 텐텔 하버린 줄스. 강기 재미 탄이 예 산지신나 메강기 린친군기 라관디 직된 관라 포웨 강기 태문 제기디 잔주든 샘두나 처번든 개발파 탤런트는 많지소 시소스.
The benefits and advantages of training in the awakening mind, Bodhichitta, in this way can be found in the questions of Viradutta Sutra. If the merit of generating the awakening mind were to take physical form, it would fill the whole of space and still exceed that. Were someone to fill the Buddha fills with the most precious jewels, numerous as sand grains in the Ganges, and offer them to the protector of the world, and were someone else simply to fold his hands out of respect for the awakening mind, this latter would be the superior offering, and its merit would be boundless.
딘디다 소놈 첨부 로 소놈 첨부다 딘디 연구리에서 다디 페요디 가드 이나야 아주 냠len 간데 제바 이나야 냠len디 제비 페요디 아니 다 쇼참 로라야 송고도 왔으러 배는 닌지 공부에는 닌지 페요 가리어 되게 전부 친 손대야 다디 아니 딘디 페요 tel야 안 미비게 가서다 대방 이치 여바이나 아니 텔 템비게 아니 딘디게다 로종 제발이야 아니 존지용야 핑교서레스 다 존지 좀바이나 아니 존지 잠비 존지기 텐롤레로 만치 dobdan dembiliyorsun 존지 바르 친족세디 용구여라서라
So through that we accrue great merit. All scriptures give us an explanation of the benefits of our practices. So our practices are being described. The benefits, the advantages of these practices are also explained. So that if, for example, the benefits of the practice of compassion, the cultivation of compassions are explained, if the benefits are explained, if you develop faith in that, you develop trust in that, you exert more effort in your training, you work harder in your training once you understand the advantages, the benefits of those practices. Like, for example, joyous effort or effort in general is described in saying that whatever you take with joyous effort, everything will come to completion, everything will be perfected, everything will come to your hand through joyous effort.
다 이체험 대바승인데 다 거기 직피 최냠len 칭이질이야 아니 쇼지 개침부 자기열에서 쇼지 개침부 아니 홍기 깨우 담보 소이느냐 대바디 아니 만한시리 송대야지 락된데 단단한 주다 아니 벽간쟁이 종이야 아니 라마 깨친 담빈나게 조지 아니 벤칭 콘진 좁아 첨보 아니 쇼지게 아니 라마치기어스 콩기 손지 니제서라 콩기 갈송도스나 난줄이야 곰바 메바이나 곰바 신초그레스 차베 메바이나 차베 빠른 지초그레스 케요 마레스 이네 만초 그 셈나노리야 대바 메바이나 데니라 데니다 추냠레 락사리스 데니 탐시 지요 마레스 데 대바데 빼 마시브 개침보레스 어디를 송샤스
Having a sense of trust, having a sense of faith is so important at the beginning of our practice when we undertake our spiritual practice. So in some texts it is said that faith is like a mother from which all good qualities are produced. Particularly, there is one great Tibetan master, the 10th Panchen Lama. Geshe recently saw one of the writings of the 10th Panchen Lama, and he said that looking at a situation, if you don't have monasteries, you can make do. You can build a monastery. If you don't have a text, you can get a copy of that text. You can find a copy, or you can commission a copy to be made. But without faith, everything is lost. There is no way to move forward without faith.
tinzada namjung anzu ta ji 대바 타나 장야 걸려야 쇼 라마 카시 송거레스 소페 케지 까불거려야 당한지 대바 짱짱 소르지려야 튀기도 다디 간다이나 삼성로지 로 당한지 도바사기도 이네 딥 때 시자 조직 차고서레스 라든도 안지 찍다 지추 다르마뇽사 추 메시지려야 추 고지 쓰거나 아니 대박 토는 고마죽 랑죽지 로 비다 남죽이 셔럽 토니 아니 비 랭이 넘버 제비 토니 아니 대바디니 카보레스 딘디기 추 토려야 로존 지야기 뒤져거란 단거 말아서 대디 메디 점발랑 안돌이야 비기 아니 대바치 매바이나 데니 사원이니 다니 추 아니 시추 투야지 용구여서 말했어 진짜 델 시니 아니 라마 마음 쇼지기다 대바타나디 쇼지 학년들 빼는 가서 주저디기다 아니 다부조 라면 서버무지 가득이나 대바드 쇼송돼야 되고 내가 원래 찾는 내가 전부 수직 차고 차고도 쓰러
When we look at teachings of great masters, some of them emphasize the importance of faith, the importance of developing pure appearance, pure vision of certain beings or certain spiritual masters and so forth. So you might wonder, what's the goal with faith? Why is it so important? Well, looking at places in which the Buddha Dhamma have not yet spread, or when it is just beginning, the Dhamma begins to take root, it'd be hard to really do anything without faith. It'd be hard to develop wisdom without initially having faith. Without a sense of faith, one would not be able to take up the hardship that is involved with putting an effort into developing wisdom. And therefore, when we look at the training that we take up when we train our mind with the Dhamma, faith is a beginning point to that. So when we look at, for example, the spiritual director of this center, part of the FPMT centers, Lama Sopa Rinpoche, Kyabje Lama Sopa Rinpoche emphasizes faith so much. He makes such a great point when he explains the importance of faith.
일단간줄에 대바 여바에 났으라 대바 여바에는 계란기 같이 주제바나 계란에 팽거레스 이슈 주제바나 계란에 팽거레스 힌두 주제바나 계란 난주 제바나 대바 여바에나 계란 주 가르쳐바나 야지야다 계란 편도 연구였어요. 대바 매나 아니 난주 제나 믹스 편도제시 각부별에셔스. 대바 원이 대바 주여바나 디 간라야 아니 지비다 나렌다니 기비 추줄 따주티티 냄비스자나 캐나라야 펜도 믹스와치 로 줄루샹다 만다비 줄루샹다 만템비 마템비 로 따주치 믹스와치 템바인자 디니 송드 데원디 아니 펜도 믹스와치 인고서리스
And this principle of faith, having faith, is beneficial not only for us from a Buddhist perspective, but if you're a Muslim practitioner, faith is beneficial to you. If you're Christian, faith is helpful. If you're a practitioner of Hinduism, faith is beneficial. And of course, needless to say that also within Buddhism, as a Buddhist practitioner, if you have faith, it is useful, it is helpful. And without faith, it would be hard to reap the benefit out of our spiritual practices. And particularly here, when we look at it from a Buddhist perspective, then on top of faith, if we add to that also the study of the writings of the great Indian masters coming from the Nalanda tradition, then you can really find those views and practices which are not found in other traditions. And there's something special to be gained from that. So on the basis of faith, when we engage with the study of the views and practices in the Nalanda tradition, then we really reap that special benefit.
ji ni su denyi tensheba denjin korwa jugdo chi semmi tami kyapsum teba set tinji ki teba mixewa chi ta ani pigi ta drip mixewa ni bodi song tun debi ton da nyamne cheto bana teni che che du pabigi ani sangi konjo di delden rup tu gores samja tamji gi kamda meba chetawa jin kengengi sangi dia delden rup tu gores.
And particularly when you look at the writings of the Indian masters coming from the Nalanda tradition, the writings are based on rational analysis, which means that seeing the reason, seeing the logic behind a particular assertion, you develop faith in that position. So in the Kasapendi Chubdungi, so His Holiness Dalai Lama composed a text praising the 17 foremost scholars of Nalanda. The text is called Illuminating the Threefold Faith. In one of the verses, he spoke about, first of all, understanding through reasons the presentation of the basis, the paths, and the result. When we understand in relation to the basis, the ways in which we engage with samsara, the stages of entering into samsara, but also the stages of living or exiting samsara, then through that, we can develop that great sense of faith, for example, in the Buddha. We can see how the Buddha jewel works. We can see how the Buddha jewel can be accomplished.
네, 나 딘디게 대범 믹스를 통한다. 배나 아니 참 인지게 로종 되어봐나 인지 오늘 단내기 샘 딩기 인지 되어봐나 아니 팬도 믹스를 지어봤디 먼저 파버 통맥이 남들 나올이야. 나 이제 두고도 왔어요. 대범 믹스를 통 인지 가서 인지 주모만 비기 인지 뒤통에 되니 아니 드버 망부슈 대마타도 다 줘야 아니 마리버 망부슈 대마도는 세줘야지 되니 제돈 잠만 공부해나 무슨 제투야지 디 어디서 돈이 연구했어 디 다가스 비게 아니 시에샤 마임바 아니 뇽톤니 줍샤바디 이토로 거샤바지 야시야담 차고 그랬어.
So with that sense of faith, we develop loving kindness and compassion to the point in which the compassion that we develop is heartfelt, coming from the bottom of our heart. Similar to the way that Arya Sangha developed compassion in that story that Geshe referred to at the beginning of this session. So it is said in that story that the compassion that Arya Sangha developed was an uncontrived compassion. Through cultivating that practice, he developed uncontrived compassion, and as soon as he's done that, immediately it was able to purify a great degree of obscurations. It was able to remove the darkness of ignorance, and also he came to see Maitreya face to face. He came to see Maitreya directly. So such an experience was put into writing in the life story of Arya Sangha. And this is really, Geshe feels, it's something that you use for the basis of developing faith.
Shonka Mambulaya Richi Kanzin Chichin, Nyon Tumiton, Penangomulu Rojina, any Umita Tolaya, any Richi Kanzina.
Richi Kanzin,
Richi Kanzin on the Keleba. Keleba of John Jorada. What deal with that? Keleba.
Keleba,
Doctor, member Korang Tolaya, Mixel Lojon Cherada, Tolo Tensadi. Then Ziba and the Zi Korang Tola, Mixel, but didn't the Richi Kanzin Severa, Kelly Lobjon Severa, what did Nanchini? Sean Sen Korantolaya, Kelly Lobjon Nanchi, deturn, Tiapi jump at some Mayimba, and in Nyon Timbitoni, and Lobjon Nanchini, Tenima Songodasera, Komulu did the song yore, when Yazimo Shivalegi, Chanju Sam Korang Tolaya, Mixing Lobjon Nanchi. And
when we study the writings of the 17 Pandits of Nalanda, those writings are not limited to just one field of knowledge. Each one of them has had their own expertise, their own fields of knowledge. So, for example, Nagarjuna's the particular expertise that Nagarjuna had were in relation to the middle way system, the Madhyamika system. Then we have, for example, the writing of the great Bodhisattva Shantideva, his expertise was the development of Bodhichitta, the mind of enlightenment. So then when we study the writings of the 17 Pandits of Nalanda, it's not that we become one-sided or that we study only one topic, but there is a variety of fields of knowledge that we get through looking at those extensive body of writing.
그래서다 어디 시디게 다 딘상한 콘남비게 숑토라야 아니 롭존 난지 아니 디시 샤비 토니 다 냠린 치바나 야차 야탄 바드니 냠네 약부치 용야치로 딘딩고서레스.
As we use these texts as a basis for our study, we develop also a foundation, a basis for our practice, so that we proceed in a good way.
달합들리 텔라메비 찬주기 셈네 상기순 교와 차워스 데르칸지 찬주기 셈 급dob기 로톱 티톱기다 상기야디 심전 탐지기 감담메바 쳇다와신 캠비기 상기디야 아니 용야디야 로톱 용거스 로톱기 로 가리톱거스네 찬주기 셈생기 다 로톱 티용 거스 티토니 상기두거스.
We also have a quotation from the Companion of Training, which says the aspiration for the awakening mind is the resolution to become enlightened. So this mind is attained by wishing for it, in that we wish for the state of enlightenment in order to gain the knowledge of the disposition of all living beings that are to be tamed, their inclinations and so forth. So this fortitude of mind, this great courage of mind is called Bodhichitta, the mind of enlightenment, the awakening mind.
Derda denza digil chanjuk sem gutobgi ta sangi sun gyugri slaondi ani chanjuk sem chi gomni sangi dogri dia sunguyo marwas rapenang anzuta chi ani chuluna medo gigris chumaluna medo gig maris laondi chuchigbo jigi ani pigi medo gigris lawo marda chuda luda trela soba on digi tungem mansam me batsaondi ani medo di rangshing kiwa nanshingi 상기야기 유조디 잔주그셈 디단냠도 아니 남주기 셔럽 간지 디님보디 아니 송르지체니 로투바나 아니 상기야라 태점키니 요사마레스 태점 메비톤타 상기야지 용구요레스로.
Through bodhicitta we become Buddhas, but having said that through bodhicitta we will become Buddhas, it's not enough just to have bodhicitta in order to become Buddha. It's similar to saying that you might pour water in order to grow a flower, but just having water, pouring water on the soil is not enough to really grow a flower. You also need to provide the seed with other conditions. You need to have heat, you need to have enough food for the flower to grow. If all conducive conditions are provided, a flower will bloom. So similarly, even though we say that through bodhicitta we will become Buddha, it's not enough to just have bodhicitta. We also need other conducive conditions for the development of our own Buddhahood. We need to proceed through the combination of both bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, and wisdom. If we unite the two, if we combine the two, there is no doubt that we will attain the state of Buddhahood.
아니 제마고 소리지 마체나 야고 소리지 상원단대기 몇배 망부여러 왔으라.
So this section says that we need to train in bodhicitta, and yet we might think, what's the benefit in training in bodhicitta? How do I get this benefit, at least in relation to this life? Such questions arise, right? We think that if I take up this practice of bodhicitta, how is it going to help me in this life?
이내 아주 삼로 약부시 땅바이나 단단한 성 땅바이나 단단한 편도 영인 단단한 내가 제바이나 단단한 편도 영인디 잠인지 장주 셈 공예를 하가지 야치 야땅바 여서 말이스. 그러면서 밑 망치하기 벤줄 디기 미친디나라에 편도 쉬우지. 그러 다다람지 무슨 편도 치 소르지 소르거라서 다 벤줄 줍서 좋은디 깔레 자야데 벤줄 줍이 양라라서 다디 깔레 자야데 단단한 펜 카르토스는 단단한 깔레 떼야지 모두 단단한 편도 스키문도 여 말이스로 년지 공부이나 단단한 년지 공부는 단단한 셈로야 박페부지 시디 소아지 제투거레스 두지 상담바이나 간지 단단한 편도 여보 미친들의 편도 여보 개와 치마의 편도 여보디 잠년지 잔주고 셈로야 로종 디임바디 야시가다 버리디네 먼저 딩문진 시투고문도 아스로
So if right now we think of loving kindness and compassion and bodhicitta, right now, immediately we will get the benefit from that. So in that sense, in terms of getting immediate benefit, there's nothing better, there's nothing greater than contemplating loving kindness and compassion and bodhicitta. In that, when we think of, for example, the thing that we often value the most, in this life, we want to be, wealthy, we want to have money. Often this is the thing that we value the most in our life. And we often put a lot of effort into securing, getting money, possessions, and so forth. So if we do it now, right, if we work hard now in order to get money, resources, and so forth, we might get it, but it is hard then to just say that this effort that we put now is beneficial, that it has this immediate benefit to us at the present. We might get from that some money or resources in our life, but then in terms of immediate benefit, it's hard to say that just from working hard, you get now an immediate benefit. But with the cultivation of loving kindness and compassion is different, because if you meditate now on compassion, immediately you get a benefit in terms of your mind becoming more vast and spacious, more at ease. And the same also happens with loving kindness. If you consider, if you think of loving kindness now, your mind immediately gets benefit from that. So it is beneficial on an immediate level. It is beneficial to us in our life, in this life, but it's also beneficial for us from life after life, in the succession of lifetimes. And therefore, it is certain, 100% certain, that we get that benefit from loving kindness and compassion and so forth.
변한 추초디 동반 단단한 편토투에 지금 문제 지고를 추초 단단한 두스동다 갑도들 같이기도 하더라. 단단한 냉에서를 제도 하더라.
It's like you drink some hot water. So we said that hot water, some say that hot water give you this immediate benefit. And yet, if you drink it straight on, then you might get burned, right? So kind of you taking in hot water and your tongue or your lips can be burned.
인지 공원디 갑도래야 인지 숙청 무슨 겁니다. 디 갑도기 차단디 숙청으로 그랬어. 차단 랑싱 가고야지. 인지 검사들이야. 그게 담아께서 직접인 뭐도. 그래서 차단 가주 숙청 뒤쪽이 샘디 박피부 연구열었어. 그래서 갑도 다가라야 편바디 아니 인지 냠렌디 야시자다 말레샤스. 이인바이네 아주 맛 소르마도데 카레스. 하마고야데 카레스.
So if we meditate on loving kindness and compassion, we will get that immediate benefit. In terms of anger and attachment will naturally decrease, they will naturally cease. And our mind will become relaxed when we meditate on loving kindness and compassion and so forth. However, we don't really see it. We don't really see the reduction of anger and attachment, and the relaxation of mind through that comes immediately through the cultivation of loving kindness and compassion. So why is it that we don't see it?
Digi Ninji Gombaya Digi, Chanju Sem Gomya Digi, sometimes Digi Semlaya, Nushu Mixewach, Jagosares, Sem Tolly, Semlaya, Nuba Mandavach, Shuk Mandavach, Digi Shuk Di, Gave Chimala Ketuyach, and a Nanzutachi Meshu Punda Nanshingi, and a Kazu Shuk show you a teacher guitar Rimbulayava, Rotua Nanshinji, and Shuk Di. 아니 냠네 디디기다 셈라야 트리고레스 딘자 겨치말라야 펜단디 딘리치네 펜단디 더 용구연서 대중한테 이치치니 대바치니 안 디톨이야 로 짐니로 아니 간주 쳔디기 벤주드웨나 신기 로 찌찌 짐니 냠네 디디래 주바이나 게스자단 바티니 카요라요 그 팀디 템바지 용구여서레스
So compassion and bodhicitta, there's a special power, special force that a mind gains. There's a special ability that we take with us from this lifetime to the next. It's like this propulsion that a mind gets through the cultivation of loving kindness and compassion, and that propulsion continues with us from this lifetime to the next. Like, for example, if you shoot a bullet from a gun, if this propulsion of the bullet is great, it can travel a great distance. So similarly, there is that propulsion that a mind gets from one lifetime to the next through the force of loving kindness and compassion and bodhicitta. So we develop trust in that, we develop faith in that, and through that we become focused on our training. We integrate all of this into the training that we take on in our entire lifetime. And from that, we get these practical benefits that are explained here.
tel shaya yin sirwa tiri nganzu tel shan da lo di nangwa ya da nganzu lo jong ngin zinda do di thama diri es da lo jema nganzu tini lo sawa go tsu ni da chik lo jong ngin zinda tsoba tsam mayin ba lo jong rangi tola ya chik lo jong tuya ge ani rewa da mulam chigi yus.
So we're going to leave this session here for now. Now, this is the last session of mind training for this year. So this is the last Sunday mind training session for this year. We will continue with the text next year. So we begin next year with a 2-week Lamrim teaching. And after that, Geshe will, at some point, commence the teachings on mind training. Now, it's not that we just want to study it, we also want to develop it practically as a spiritual practice. So this is the intention that we set for the mind training teachings for next year.
아니 저쪽이 땅 곳이 그쪽이 아니 튕기 장애리 아니 비기다 다 기시다 개균이 내가 저 데려왔어 다디 마히 비기 아니 사말로기 아니 칼리게요리 아니 다 냥에메나 아니 시사스케요 말았어 한 계란조인 바에야 아니 호다 받아진 데려야 용 한지 냠도 지온디 한지 시사 고급지라고 하리 아니 셰바디 고 지시코 마동 바르도 시샤규디다 데데로 레도스다 데자 아니 칸셰바디 피글레야 니데기도 왔어 디즈도 아니 다 뎀바 이마인디 아니 카드스 지야고 시에도만도디 아니 슈드르 제사 망부여레스 드졸레야 슈드르 체니 등원이 지 코메 로메지 시샤여바나 계란 코메지 시샤도 드실랍나 디고르스 다 디메바나 안 드스달레 상로티스다 말로티스 갸반다 안 사미 게자르와스 라.
So this is Geshe's hopes and prayers that we will not only study it, but also put it into practice. So in order then for us to meet and share those teachings on mind training, there are many conditions that need to be present. So we have the staff members of Chenrezig Institute that provide us with the ability to do so. And of course, Geshe said that without him as the Geshe and without the interpreter, of course, this is, you could say, our main work, at least our main responsibility here, at least with those sessions of mind training teachings. But there are also other people that are working hard in order to provide us with all the conditions that are necessary for being able to do so. So we have that happening. But also on top of that, without having people here that listen to these teachings, that attend the teachings, that listen to the teachings, we would not get the opportunity to share those teachings with others. So you also play a part in that. And through that, or without you guys, there would be no benefit. So we want to then continue to do that till the end of samsara, till all of samsara is emptied. So, of course, so long as we do not leave samsara for that long, we still need to continue to study those teachings and then to put it into practice. So this is something that we keep in mind, and through that we accrue those roots of virtue. So thank you very much. We'll leave it here for today. So we'll say some dedication prayers at the end of these teachings. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhichitta that does not arisen, arise and grow, is that which has arisen, not diminished, but increased more and more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may quickly attain the state of the Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. In the land encircled by snow and mountains, you are a source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain till samsara ends. Several of the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings who makes extremely clear the path that is unification of emptiness and to the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You uphold this abused moral way, who serves as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Majuna's victorious doctrine, who mercifully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Persevere of myself and others, your disciples. Please, please live long. Thank you.
See you next year.